What's going on, guys? This is Empty Box, and today we're going to be talking about the most hyped up sim in the history of hyped up sims. Then again, that's not really all that much of a history. The only one I can think of that comes anywhere close to having the amount of hype that this one had is Racing Legends, which never actually showed up ever. Fortunately, though, this one did show up because this is Assetto Corsa, which is currently available through Steam Early Access, which basically means you get a development version of the game, pretty much aka a beta, somewhere around there. We've seen this before. This is nothing new at all. It comes with 11 cars in a variety of classes, everything from a Fiat 500 Abarth to a BMW M3 E30, E92, E92 M3 GT2 to a Lotus 49, Ferrari 458. I think you guys have heard of that car, maybe, perhaps. To a Formula Barth, which is basically like a Formula 3 type of car. Very wide variety here from the get-go, from the onset. Very nice selection of cars for such a small selection of cars. As well as 5 tracks. You got Mangione, which was a track that was in the technology preview back in early 2013. Silverstone National, which is basically a shortened down version of Silverstone. Vallelunga, Imola, as well as 1960s Monza to go along with that Lotus 49. It's only proper. It's how you have to do things, is it not? So you have a pretty decent selection of tracks. They are looking at updating this early access title very frequently, so we're going to see a lot more content added in the future. We've seen a lot more content showing off. There's definitely a lot of cars coming and definitely a lot of cars in the pipeline. Currently, all you get is just driving around in circles. There's no multiplayer, there's no AI currently. Both of those will be featured in the 1.0 release, which obviously is part of the early access. You get the finished version of the game. So, good news on that front. It's finally here. It's no longer vaporware. We actually got something tangible. Yay! Now, on the subject of hype, let me just talk about this really quick. This sim has been hyped to ungodly beliefs to the point where people have been putting mods into R Factor and been saying, yes, this is coming for Assetto Corsa, but we're not going to actually finish it even though we have it in R Factor and we still don't have anything from Assetto Corsa, but we're just going to say we're not going to do this. You know, it's that kind of silly thing. People have been already hailing it as the greatest sim in the history of mankind, even though it isn't actually out, which is pretty freaking silly. For any of you guys out there who haven't heard of Assetto Corsa, yeah, it's pretty big when it comes to sim racing. This is the one that I think a lot of people had circled on their calendar like 16 times, like if they knew when it's coming out. All we knew is soon, and their version of soon was a couple of days actually. So, but yeah, it's pretty hyped up. This is pretty big, pretty important release within sim racing. So, anyways, let's actually get into the nuts and bolts, the nitty gritty, the actual game. Sim. Sorry. I will put it this way. I don't really ever drive road cars in racing sims. I don't usually enjoy driving around in circles by myself. Except for the fact that I just wasted about 2 hours driving around Imola in an E30 M3 with no lap time display at all, no care in the world. Just didn't care if I went faster. Because really the fun was going sideways or doing stupid stuff, and that is what this one delivers in bucket loads. The best description I can think of for you guys out there who are familiar with a wide variety of sims is it's like Live for Speed, only newer, in the sense that you can drift. You actually can legitimately drift. I could show you driftage. If I didn't have the Formula rim for my club sport, it's next to impossible to drift with one of those things, just so you know. But you can get sideways, and it's not scary. It's not intimidating. It's like in a real car. You know, you counter steer into the slide, you make your correction, and you're on with your day. It's not a moment unless it's an actual moment. There's a difference. Cars are savable. Cars are drivable. And that's the way they should be. One thing that Assetto Corsa really does exceptionally well is the regaining of grip coming out of a slide. You know, in a way, it's kind of like HD television, HD YouTube. You should be watching HD, by the way, if you're not. But basically, it's more defined. There's more definition. It's more detailed. It's more natural. You know, it's more as it actually was, you know, rather than standard definition. That's not to say that you can't enjoy this video or television in standard definition, but why watch in standard definition when high definition is available? Simple as that. You know, just coming out of the slide feels a lot more natural than other sims. And honestly, of the sims currently out there in various stages, this one feels much more natural. To be honest, this blows the doors off of R Factor 2. Not even close. Not even close at all. You know, compared to iRacing's latest, greatest tire model on the cars that are available, it's kind of a tough comparison because over there, they only have currently the slow cars on that version of the tire. You know, but it's got the same type of characteristics. You know, it feels very similar, feels very natural. Honestly, it's a tire. It's a tire. That said, there is an issue that I'd like to talk about that's not necessarily an issue, but maybe it is, but maybe it's not. Originally, I would have said this is a very serious issue and an issue that kept me from really enjoying my first couple of hours with the game, but now that I've kind of put more time into it, driven around Imola a lot more, not so much, because I've kind of gotten used to it and kind of started to interpret things, and that is force feedback. This one's kind of difficult to explain because it's not necessarily an issue, although it is kind of an issue, and that is because Assetto Corsa doesn't add any force feedback that the steering wheel and the real car wouldn't actually have. Now you might say, well, how's that a bad thing? How's that weird? How's that any different? Other sims filter other things that you wouldn't necessarily feel through the steering wheel in the car, things that you'd feel through the seat of your pants through the steering wheel, because for probably 95% plus of us, the steering wheel is the only thing that we have to feel the car, so we need extra information to help make up for the lack of feel, to make the cars more drivable, more approachable, you know, easier to drive, more common sense. However, Assetto Corsa doesn't do that, which at first was very unnatural, is very off-putting to the point where I couldn't even drive a lap and keep the car actually on track because there's just no feeling for speed, no feeling for the weight of the wheel or anything like that. It's very unnatural to get used to, but once you put more time into it, it's a non-issue. Honestly, it makes more sense. It's not better, it's not worse. I prefer the other way, the more feedback, although it's telling you the things that are correctly to be told to you, if that makes any sense. Very weird way to describe things, but that really is kind of the feel. The tech preview felt very similar, if you're familiar with that. Just odd, to say the least. Some people will say, oh, well, you know, that's how it should be. Some people will say, well, you're driving a virtual car around a virtual track, so a little bit of extra feel would be much appreciated. It doesn't necessarily hamper the ability to drive the car because you quickly start to interpret things with your eyes, and you drive with your eyes a little bit more, but with so many other sims out there, chances are, if you're experienced with other sims, you've kind of already developed a little bit of a feel for things that you feel in your wheel that you're probably not going to feel anymore. So it's just kind of weird. It is. It's not better, not worse, just different. Then there is the sounds, which, okay, pretty much every sim, the sounds leave something to be desired. They don't usually excite you. For example, the sound of a Ferrari V12, I think we all know, is very exciting. And a racing sim, no, it just cool, yeah, sure. Here in Assetto Corsa, the story isn't any different at all. The sounds aren't terrible, they aren't so bad that they keep you from enjoying the game. Gran Turismo. Oh god, sorry, forgive me. But I think they could be improved. They don't necessarily sound entirely wrong, like the car doesn't sound anything like the car sounds like in the real world. However, it just kind of sounds very digital. That really is the best way to describe it. It sounds like somebody encoded these samples at MP3 at like 128 kilobytes a second. It just doesn't sound good. Some people will probably never notice. Myself, I was driven pretty crazy. But that is something that you'll be able to change because Assetto Corsa is going to be moddable. In fact, I'm pretty sure there was already a mod released for one of the sounds that I saw, something like that. There certainly was one in the tech preview, which is a long while ago, so that should help indicate that it's going to be moddable. The sounds aren't that big of a deal because you can change the sounds anyways. Yes. 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 Very interesting, though. This one has a lot of potential. The sky is the limit, they say, although we'll see how far it actually gets, because while I'm very impressed by what is available and the way things are in this early access version of the game, I'm still not entirely sure because there's still questions to be answered, such as multiplayer racing. How well is it going to work? What's the lifespan going to be? You know, is it going to be one of those sims where you have to join a league to enjoy? Or will it end up becoming, for example, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, you know, a Live for Speed version 2. You know, that game had successful online racing that you didn't necessarily need to be a league to enjoy it. You know, you could actually do open server racing. It can be done. It's been done before. Could this be the next one to actually do that? You know, excluding iRacing because that's in its own little gated community. Let's ignore that for that comparison. But, you know, is the AI going to work well? You know, I could really go for an offline racing sim, you know, with amazing AI. You know, I say it all the time, but it should really say something that's the best AI in a racing game is either NASCAR Racing 2003 season or Grand Prix 4, which both of those sims are over a decade old. It's been a decade since AI has been improved. This is their first chance with AI, their first sim with AI, so they're approaching it from a blank slate. They can do whatever. They're developing it clean, you know, right off the bat, fresh from start. There's no legacy code or anything involved with that, so maybe it could be amazing. You know, this has the most potential, you know, in that regard. So drive's interesting. It looks pretty good. Wouldn't say necessarily the best. I still think R Factor 2 looks amazing when absolutely maxed out and you're actually driving it. Don't get me wrong, Assetto Corsa does not look bad at all. Anyone who says it looks bad is crazy. You crazy. Drives well, looks good. Moddability will be a focus, will be key. We'll be seeing how that plays out, excuse me, in the long-term future, of course, but you know, that's a plus. You know, sounds are a little bit lackluster. You know, there's a couple of other things. Force feedback I wish was slightly different. Who knows? Maybe that's something that can be patched. For example, you think about R Factor, an extension game stock car, same engine, entirely different feedback. You know, stock R Factor feedback is absolute garbage. Game stock car force feedback is glorious. You know, the Real Feel plugin, absolutely legendary. Who knows? Maybe there'll be Real Feel for Assetto Corsa, and then you'll have your options available to you. You know, so who knows? This is really interesting because this is the first moddable sim from Kunos, which, you know, how is that going to play out? Is it going to be really moddable or kind of sort of moddable with a lot of restrictions? How is the Steam Workshop going to play into things? We'll see how that works out. Obviously, racing sims, you get into mods and licensed territory and gray area after gray area, so very interesting, very exciting, definitely one you're going to want to have on your hard drive. Trust me. I'm going to go back to Imola now, so hope you guys enjoyed. Bye.